Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Shootaround 2.0. I am, of course, your host, Rusty Buckets, but we have a new guy here, new show, new host, 3-Cone. For the people who may not know you, Connor, let them know who you are.
Yeah, I do basketball YouTube stuff, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And I'm a Thunder fan. If you can't tell by the NBA Champions hoodie that I kind of wear in like half my videos, probably 90% of the time you see me on here, I'm going to be wearing Thunder gear of some kind. My background has 2 paintings, I think, of Shea, and then like a Thunder. You can probably tell. And I know Jacob. We've talked a lot of hoops before. I know he's also going to glaze the Thunder, so it's going to be great. This is my exact type of podcast that I'm looking for. So I'm excited.
No, this is going to be a SGA propaganda podcast. People are going to hate that side of things anytime we talk about them. And luckily, they are on the ticker, so we can get the glazing going pretty early here. But of course, just recently, last night, Jimmy Butler tore his ACL. So wanted to talk about the future of the Golden State Warriors and what the hell that looks like, because there's kind of a bunch of different directions this can go, but almost none of them are positive. It's like that meme of like this dark road and you go to the castle and then there's this happy one. No, it's only dark roads. There is only terrible outcomes for the future. Almost certainly. The only positive one that I've managed to think of is like if they drop out of the playoffs and get a top 3 pick. That is their escape from this. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell they do.
Yeah, because I mean, it couldn't have come at a worse time. I guess the only time it could have been worse is if they like made all these all-in moves and it's post-deadline. But I'm sure they had this whole game plan. I kind of came to the conclusion that MPJ was going to be a Golden State Warrior. That trade just kind of made sense in my head. And now it's like, what the hell do they do? With Jimmy, I mean, they've been playing great. They've won like, what is it, 12 of their last 16, something along those lines. Like they're not that far back of the 4 seed even. They're only like a couple games back, I think 2.5 back of the Wolves. So they were figuring it out. You know, Kuminga was going to be on the move, and they actually finally made the all-in move. I feel terrible for Steph Curry because he dealt with so much over a few years. Like, no, Steph, like we can't trade all these random guys. Like we have our 2 timelines, and they were sucking in the process. And now they finally get him a co-star to play with. He plays great. And now it just doesn't exist anymore. The only other positive timeline I could potentially see is a war where they get hyper aggressive and Giannis asks out before the deadline. And it's like, we've got Jimmy Butler's salary. We'll give you multiple young players. We'll give you all the picks in the world. You know, they can go super far down the line to like, at this point, you can go to 2032. And then it's like, by that point, Steph is obviously retired, although he feels immortal. So maybe he's playing at 45 years old. Giannis is in his late 30s at that point. I mean, it's potentially a somewhat attractive offer. And if you're the Bucks, maybe you're just trying to do right by Giannis. You get a decent offer from Golden State. Like that's the only way I see this going kind of positively, but it sucks because were the Warriors contenders? No. I mean, were they going to win a first round series? Probably not, although maybe with the right matchup. But it did feel like, you know, we had the chance for at least one more Steph Curry playoff run. And now I don't think they're going to make the playoffs at this point. They just can't.
I was really, really high on the idea of a Michael Porter Jr. trade. I really thought that would unlock this team. I've also suggested that the Thunder should trade for him, but we'll table that. But like truly the idea of like, yeah, just go get fucking 6'10" Klay Thompson out there. Just have him launch 10 threes a game. It doesn't fully solve all of their spacing issues, but it goes a long way because like the Warriors for the past couple of years, Butler addition, Kuminga being there, like the big reason Kuminga can't play is because you have Draymond and Jimmy Butler and the spacing is so bad. But Michael Porter Jr., if you have him and Steph on the floor at the same time, those are 2 of the most unguardable, unbelievable shooters in the NBA. Not that I'm breaking any news by saying that, but like their forces combined would be enough to make up for the fact that Jimmy and Draymond cannot shoot the ball, but that future doesn't seem to exist anymore. Like I was at a point where I was like, yeah, lock it in. Michael Porter Jr. is a Warrior. It just makes too much sense. They can do a really good trade package. And they can do a good trade package without giving up too much that actually
it's not going to ruin
hurts.
them. Like they keep their decent supporting cast there. And I mean, you just talk about not just the shooting, but the threat of the shooting. because MPJ will pull it over literally anybody. And you could stack the two of us on top of each other, double that, put us in a trench coat with like wacky inflatable arm type things. You know, have you seen those videos? I think it's Steph, or I think it was Steph who was like overseas and he was at like some event and they were having him do these like insane carnival shooting games. Like that's the type of stuff Michael Porter Jr. lives for. That he wants to shoot over any contest. He's like, if you want the ball, go ahead and get out the net. He has
J.R. Smith's mentality.
He does.
He has the J.R. Smith, I want to contest.
Yeah, 6'10" J.R. Smith is a pretty sick player.
I have always described Michael Porter Jr. as a 6'10" J.R. Smith, and I just loved the idea of him playing there. So, like, that is one of the first things where I was like, fuck, I wanted to see that, and now I don't get to see that. But of course, Stephen Curry is my favorite player of all time. Safe to say he's not in his prime, but he is pretty prime adjacent. He is not that far from it, to the point of like, I still believe there's a world where he could be the best guy winning a title. OKC being the juggernaut that they are makes that barrier of entry higher than it already normally is. But still, I was like, there is a world where this works. And I do think if they traded for Michael, maybe they get one or two other decent bench pieces in the process, that they could have been a like good second round exit, a team that can beat one of the lower tier teams in the West playoffs. Anyways, there's really no such thing as a low tier playoff West team, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But beat like, I don't know, the Suns, like that was in the realm of possibility. But now, like you said, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs at all. And what is interesting to me about this is, given that Jimmy Butler is 36, it's probably going to take him a year to recover from this. What does he look like when he comes back? It's probably not too optimistic. It would be, I think, foolish. It would be very like this Warriors front office to be like, yeah, we'll just wait a year for Jimmy Butler to come back. Seems like the type of sitting on their hands mentality that they've had for a minute now.
The cowardice that they like to showcase, yeah.
Right. Mike Dunleavy, dude. Saw a post from Ballsack Sports that was like, Mike Dunleavy just shows up to the office, jerks off, and heads home. He doesn't know what time it is.
that man did one thing, and it was trading for Jimmy Butler. How is Jonathan Kuminga still on the roster? How have we reached this point?
It's actually unbelievable.
How have we gotten reports that there's a chance he's not dealt? I mean, the Jimmy Butler thing complicates things a little bit.
That's the thing.
And you know what? That's maybe the worst part about all of this. I cannot do another, because the deadline passes and it's early February. It's going to go through the finals. They're probably not going to do it right as the offseason starts. I cannot do another 5 to 6 months of, Jonathan Kuminga is kind of unhappy with Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr hates Jonathan Kuminga and would literally rather explode than play Jonathan Kuminga even 3 minutes per game. I can't do it anymore. I cannot do another every single day of the summer when, the depths of the offseason. It is August, it is September, and it's the 13th tweet of the week from NBA Central that's like, so-and-so reporter saying, Jonathan Kuminga had a smoothie today, and he's like, that tastes pretty good. Maybe I'll actually stay and go and say it this time. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. It is my least favorite storyline in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. No, when he
and why do all
demanded
these
a
teams
trade,
want Jonathan Kuminga? Why I'm not on the Jonathan Kuminga trade. I'm sorry, I got to get this rant off real quick. I'm not a big believer in Jonathan Kuminga as a player. I think he's fine. I think there's upside. I just can't fathom how it's like, we have 47 teams that are interested in Jonathan Kuminga. No one will trade for him. The Warriors won't trade him. And they hate him. Like, the Warriors actually hate Jonathan Kuminga, and he hates them. And the rest of the teams are like, we'll give you Malik Monk, who could really go ahead and help your team out in the offseason, and a first-round pick from us, the Sacramento Kings.
It is the Kings.
Yeah, and
it is the Kings, to be fair.
And the Warriors are like, a first-round pick and a good player for the guy that we hate? Pass. I just can't do it.
Fuck that. That makes far too much sense. Why would we do that? No, I'm not a Kuminga guy either. I think too many people see points per game and just it's blinders, like they cannot see. Saw a clip of Jeff Teague the other day talking about Jonathan Kuminga, like they're doing him so dirty. No, they're not. He shouldn't be there. They should have ended this relationship a long time ago.
Yeah.
But like, Steve Kerr is not wrong to come to the conclusion that Jonathan Kuminga shouldn't play with this team. He's not the one who signed him. He's not the one who insisted on keeping him on this team. So I don't think that's Steve Kerr's fault. There's a lot of things you can blame Steve Kerr for, but a forward who can't shoot, isn't much of a defender, is a terrible playmaker, And while he's a good slasher, isn't that great of a ball handler and not so physical that he's like Giannis unstoppable type shit. So it's like, okay, if you look at, that graph of when he was being drafted of Josh Giddey's weaknesses, and it's just like every skill in the game.
Yeah.
Like that's the same thing with Kuminga, except like he's a pretty good slasher. He's a pretty good cutter. He's a good in transition. It's like, oh, wow, good in transition. No one's ever been good in transition before.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's a nightmare. It is like it's like a toxic relationship. And it's like going on to year 4 now. And it's like, I'm tired of telling you guys to break up.
It
like,
is exactly
like
that.
Yeah, when Kuminga demanded a trade and I recorded my video on it, I was literally like, what do I say that I haven't said 15 times already? What can I say that isn't, here are all the problems with Kuminga. Here's why the Warriors should have traded him a long fucking time ago. It's the same video. Oh, I've recorded the same Jonathan Kuminga video like 4 times.
And that
so
is like,
that
if you told me to
situation
create
being
a
prolonged.
hell, like I die, I go to hell, and there's like a personal like torture, like it's personalized to me. They're like, okay, go ahead and sit down, record another Jonathan Kuminga video, like do it. And it's every day for eternity that I have to talk about Jonathan Kuminga rumors. I just can't do it anymore. Like it is mind-blowing that this is still happening, that it's still going on. Like it's reached the point where they traded for Jimmy. It felt like a foregone conclusion. He was gone this offseason. They signed him January 15th. I literally made a TikTok celebrating the fact that it was Jonathan Kuminga can be traded day and that the national nightmare is almost over.
Yeah.
International nightmare. This covers the globe. And I can't do it anymore. So I'm glad we got to talk about Jonathan Kuminga and ramble about this. Like, when is the last time a role player had like this much just around him for this long? It just never happens.
It's really hard to say. The thing is, like, the reason why, because you label him a role player, I think that's accurate. But I think NBA fans, when they see a young guy who has averaged 16 points in his first couple of years, they go, this is a budding potential star. And I'm just like, I don't see that at all. I can see a world where Kuminga goes to some other team and puts up 20 points per game. Will it be good? Well, it'll be like a Jeremy Grant on the Pistons 20 points per game. Like, okay, congratulations. Like, it doesn't actually mean that you're that good. And it's just like, you're not a good NBA player if you're bad at most skills. Like, I don't care how good you are at the other stuff. Like, even very limited players like a Zion or a Giannis, just for like the slasher example, still really good playmakers and ball handlers. Giannis is still a great defender and rebounder. Like you have to bring other things besides for just being able to slash. The similar reason why I've never been a big Giddey guy, because I'm like, okay, he can kind of dribble and he can kind of pass, and then everything else is not that good. He is hitting his threes this year, so yeah, we'll give him that. But like just in general, like if there's so many weaknesses, I just don't think a lot of NBA fans have adapted the mentality of like, we are in the era of versatility. And if you have like 3 or 4 categories in the game that you are bad at, it is very hard to be a positive player. And in the case of the Warriors situation, given that he can't just be scoring the ball all the time, because it doesn't make sense to just be like, Kuminga, fuck it, go take over. Like,
Steph sit in the corner, let Kuminga cook.
Yeah. It emphasizes his weaknesses because the fit's so bad. So the fact that it felt like fate when Jimmy Butler tore his ACL, I was like, God doesn't want Kuminga to leave the Warriors. He's doing everything in his power
another
keep
flood
Kuminga
will
on the
hit
Warriors
before Jonathan Kuminga gets traded out of Golden State.
Yes, the second coming of Christ will happen before Jonathan Kuminga wears a different jersey.
At this point, it feels like that's just a possibility. One more thing on the Jimmy Butler thing that I wanted to note: is there a world where there's a Jimmy Butler Anthony Davis swap, where it's Jimmy Butler goes to Dallas?
Yeah, I did watch your video and I ripped that point from you. I gave you credit in my video.
No, I mean, it's one of those things, like, it feels like it kind of makes sense. It's like disgusting to picture that as the move.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's either AD is like never available, but I mean, Jimmy's not going to be available. You get a great defensive big in AD who can at least help you out a little bit. There was some reported interest, and with the Mavericks, I mean, it allows them to get off the Anthony Davis thing. You get in Jimmy Butler, who can come back next year theoretically, and for the moment,
isn't Butler's contract longer?
I think Jimmy
I
expires.
believe Butler's contract's another year or two.
I think he expires after next
Didn't they
year.
extend him?
It was only a couple year
Didn't they
extension
extend
though.
him?
His contract expires at the end of next season. Yeah, so it's expiring next year, so it's not bad. Like,
isn't it basically the same at that point?
Yeah, I think AD's contract is the
less.
Same. Anthony Davis. Yeah.
It all hangs on AD's injury. Is he going to get surgery? Because my understanding is if he gets surgery, it's season ending. And we haven't gotten a concrete answer on that yet. So I think whether or not that's a possibility, we have to see if he has season ending surgery or not, because if that's what happens, then there's no fucking point.
Yeah.
Fit wise, Draymond Green and Anthony Davis on offense makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
But defensively, crazy. Absolutely wild defensively. If you can make the justification of like that plus Steph and being Steph, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of giving so much shot creating responsibility to Steph at this age. And I am worried about what the back half of this season will look like for him. But that's the last thing I want to bring up in this realm. Steph trade?
Yeah.
Possible.
I mean, it's
one of those things. You're talking about shit being gross. I don't want that idea at all. Like, as much as I am trade pilled, like, if you ask me, would you like a trade to happen or not? The answer is yes, both for entertainment, but also content. But like, at my core, I really do not want to see Steph in another team's jersey. And I especially don't see it because I'm afraid of like that Patrick Ewing Orlando Magic photo type shit where it's like, oh, why did Tony Parker play on the Hornets? What the fuck was that about?
I was gonna say, you don't want to see Steph Curry play for the Charlotte Hornets where his dad played and his dad's getting his jersey retired. You don't want to see Steph Curry Hornets.
Oh boy.
Hey,
I mean, they've been better lately, but
the new Klay Thompson Conca kind of goes crazy. LaMelo finally gets the Golden State Warriors like he was supposed to be before they took James Wiseman.
Why did I even bring this discussion up? This is already getting gross.
I know.
I hate it.
It is something that has to be like at least considered a little bit. I don't think Steph's going anywhere, but I mean, the fact that Jimmy's out now, like, they kind of got to do something. Maybe they go insane and it's like Jimmy Butler for Anthony Davis and they still trade for Michael Porter Jr., Kuminga's involved, Moses Moody. Like, maybe they just go crazy at this deadline and salvage it, but yeah, kind of screws them and ends their season.
Not characteristic.
No, yeah, I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors who have held on to every young player ever for no reason. So
they have been having a do nothing off with the Chicago Bulls ever since Bob Myers left.
Did you see Kenny's tweet
like,
about
which one of us can just sit on our feet more?
See Kenny's tweet about them just taking all y'all's salary and just like letting Jimmy Butler rehab in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I won't go on this tangent too long, but the Bulls do have almost $70 million in expiring contracts. And I'm like, if you don't use any of that, I'm going to scream. I'm going to be so upset if they just let all that money expire.
Well, then you're going to sign LeBron.
That's a very good asset.
You're going to sign LeBron this summer, and LeBron's going to finish in Chicago.
That would be a hell of a twist. But just for the sake of argument, let's just throw out a couple of teams who, if Steph was suddenly on the market, which it probably, if it did happen, it would happen in the offseason, but still. What are some teams that you think should go for it? Because it is a unique position because he is old enough. You don't want to give a haul. You can't really do that. Not to mention, teams are not giving hauls anymore the way that they used to because of the apron and first round picks being more valuable and etc. But what are some teams? I'm looking at the East right now. I would be pissed if any team that can't be immediately contenders with him traded for him. If you can't contend with Steph, do not fucking do it, please. But I'm looking at the East and I'm like, it'd be very funny if he went to the Celtics. That's gross. That's fucking nasty. Orlando Magic, perhaps. I could see him being what unlocks that Paolo for Steph swap.
Or Franz, that you get Franz and Kuminga and you keep those two to build around. Oh my God. You want to talk about being unable to shoot? I mean, that's their dream.
Yeah.
That's what they've been going for. Yeah. Like, East is kind of gross with teams that could trade for him. I mean, I heard the Hawks need a point guard and CJ McCollum is actually being called. Yeah. He has been like, I'm seeing Hawks fans say that he needs to be sentenced to death over there in Atlanta for the stuff that he's been doing. Yeah, like that's been what they've been calling him.
I haven't watched a Hawks game with him yet, but I've looked at all the box scores, and every time I'm like, why did he take 24 shots in 20 minutes?
You haven't seen his game tying or game, I think it was game tying shot attempt at the end of the game against Milwaukee yesterday. It was like, okay, I need you to watch that at some point, because so he brings the ball up. The game is, they're down 2. He brings it up, loses his dribble on like the elbow, just inside the 3-point line, right side, and just guys are running around getting open. He's just not passing it. And he takes the worst shot you've ever seen in your entire life, like double clutch past Kyle Kuzma, I think it was, bricks it. And Jalen Johnson's standing behind him, like his hand, like he's, you know, the meme of Hannibal Buress looking at his hands like this. He was looking at that, like, do I not exist? Am I a ghost? Does CJ see me? It's just, yeah, it's been a disaster over there. So yeah, I mean, CJ McCollum, Golden State Warrior,
Buress.
Western Conference. I mean, is there
Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota could really use them.
Houston, Kevin Durant, Steph back in action.
Yeah, Houston was the first team that came to mind for me. If the Spurs want to go real crazy, ship De'Aaron Fox over there to Golden State and just let Steph Curry rock with Wemby. They got assets.
The thing is, like, you can have the argument of like De'Aaron Fox is nearly a decade younger.
Yeah,
but
also Stephon Castle and Dylan
De'Aaron
Harper
Fox
coming
with
along.
Steph. Yeah, because you have a backup future guard anyways. So like, if you took the logic of like Steph and Wemby would just go so insane that like if I was OKC, I would be sweating. I would be terrified to face that team. Not that shouldn't be a little anxious about the Spurs already, but if you do the alien plus Steph Curry's shooting gravity, what do you do with that? That is like an insane combination of superpowers. That is the Avengers have assembled to beat the Thunder. 2
people that just don't make any sense when it comes to basketball with Wemby and Steph. Yeah, I mean, like there's a crazy scenario where something like that would work, where you've got the future of the guard position already. It's like, okay, well, let's just grab Steph Curry, and Steph can probably play for a few more years at least. It feels like, I mean, he's an all-star starter right now.
I mean, I think if he had this year, if he had 2 years after this year where he's still Steph, unless Wemby just injures himself too much, you're winning a title. I think the Thunder are going to lose at least once out of those 2 years to Steph and Wemby. That it's just crazy. But anyways, I don't want to harp on this too long. But yeah, the Denver Nuggets would also be kind of fun, but the only way to do that would be a Jamal Murray deal, and they're not going to do that. So yeah, desperate times in Golden State. But to completely change the tone, let's talk about a team that is up. I want to get a brief complaint to you. I'm going to project all of OKC fandom onto you. I made a video about their struggles semi-recently. They went on a 5-game win streak somewhat recently, and all of the Thunder fans were like, we got a win streak now. Fuck you. And I'm just like, you can still learn something that could potentially be consequential in the playoffs down the road. I was literally sick, so I couldn't make a video mid losing a bunch. And what's funny about that is they lost to the Heat right after that. So fuck you, Thunder fans, even though I have been in your corner the whole time. I can't, it really bothers me when I'm like a guy who's like speaking for the quality of a team for so long. I picked them as the favorite going into last year when almost everybody picked Celtics repeat. So I'm like, I've been in your corner. Let me talk about some bad stuff for a second. So 74 games, not going to happen. Pretty much, unless they just really fucking lock in.
I mean, the rest of the way, just undefeated the rest of the way, and we're there.
Yeah,
there's time. Yeah, it's one of those
but
things.
The question,
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's the same thing with the Thunder too. With me being like a diehard Thunder fan, like everyone knows that's kind of my thing. I talk about them at least a little bit in almost every video for the most part, but it happens like inversely where like the Thunder lost to the Hornets. And I had to like travel that day. I was back home visiting some family for the holidays. I'm traveling back. And immediately it was the day that Trey, like we got the report that Trey was probably going to be traded. Like that it was, they were ramping up that both sides are looking for a separation. So I quickly make a video talking about that. And that same night, the Thunder lose the Hornets. Half my comments in that video were not about Trae Young. It was about, oh, where's the Thunder lose the Hornets video, buddy? Like I was traveling the next day. I also rarely make a video just about a single game. It's kind of got to be like a storyline. And also a few days earlier, I just made a video saying, do the Thunder have a Spurs problem after Christmas? I was like, are the Thunder in trouble if they face the Spurs? Why is this matchup not working out for the Thunder? And I talked about some of their struggles. And it's like, where's the Thunder Hornets video? I made a video 2 days ago talking about the Giannis situation and, the fans booing him and all that type of stuff. And I'm like, are things, maybe going to happen at the deadline? Because Brian Windhorst is saying teams haven't given up. And one of the first comments I get is, still waiting on that Thunder Hornets video. I'm not going to make it a week later. If I didn't make it now, it's not going to happen. It's the same thing happened. So I get it.
No, I the amount of times that I'll get accused of like having some sort of agenda for not having made a video, and I'm like, I have a life. Some shit happened.
No, like shut up, my entire robot. Talk about my team.
Right. My entire first half of January was a disaster. We had a bunch of car troubles. I got super sick, and like a bunch of stuff just kind of fucked with the schedule. And then there's comments that are like, man, you have an agenda. You didn't make a Celtics video quick enough. It's because you despise the Celtics. It's just annoying. But anyways, the topic here I wanted to discuss, are the Thunder a super team? Which I do think some people immediately scoff at when the question even comes up, but I think it really depends on what your definition is. And me personally, my definition has always been that you have to have 2 superstars. If you do not have 2 superstar, like top 10, 11, 12 players in the league, I don't really consider your team to be a super team. However, I do feel like the 2020s has at least given reason to adjust that definition, because depth has been so king, and the Thunder absolutely dominate in that department in particular. But the one thing that I've always harped on is, like, I think in order to be a super team, you have to be really, really good without your top guy. And the Thunder, if Shea is out, they still win. They're still good, but they're not anything resembling a great team. Like, they would probably be a 48-win team without Shea. Straight up. And I think it is kind of a disrespect or not giving enough credit to how impactful SGA is on that team.
Yeah, I don't think the Thunder are a super team. I've struggled with what my definition is, because like you said, I mean, if we take a look at the old definitions, after the Luka trade last year, like if that team existed in the early mid 2010s or 2000s or whatever, people are probably like, oh my God, that's a super team. LeBron James and Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, like, look at this team. They're insane. And they probably would have won a championship. But because there's more versatility now, there are a lot more things you have to consider, and depth is so important. It just, they were first round exit very, very quickly. It's one of those things where it's hard to ever, like, I don't know the next time we're going to see someone that feels categorized as a super team, because last year's Thunder, we were historically dominant. This year so far, despite a lot of injuries, 36-8, second best net rating of all time, even with the struggles, like they're on pace to again win 68, nearly 70 games. And like, yeah, extremely talented. Shea is the MVP, right up there in best player in the world conversations. J-Dub has been up and down this season, but still defensively, he's amazing. And he's had some good offensive performances. Of course, we'll see when he comes back from the hamstring strain. If I had to guess, probably out until about the All-Star break, and then they bring him back. I think they just use that timeline to give him some extra rest, probably a little bit longer than he needs, but you don't need to rush him back. Chet, I think it's pretty clearly jumped to an all-star level, even all NBA type of conversations this season. Been one of the best defenders on the planet, averaging a really like hyper efficient 18-8 a game with a couple of blocks, just dominated the Cavaliers yesterday. Role players, this great defense, great coach. Like, yeah, the Thunder have pretty much everything that you typically look for, except, yeah, they don't have like, it's not like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Like that Warriors team was a super team. And I think if you consider this current iteration of the Thunder as a super team, like you open yourself up to a lot of possibilities of all these other teams all time being super teams. Not that there are many teams as good as the Thunder were last season and have been this season, but I mean, like the Thunder didn't do anything too crazy to construct this squad. It was the Paul George trade, getting Shea, like that was obviously the big move, and Jado comes through that, but you get those two guys from a trade. One was, a rookie that had a pretty good rookie season, but I don't think anybody after Shea's rookie year is like, yeah, he's going to be maybe the best player in the world someday and one of the best guards we've ever seen. I don't think anybody knew that, Jada was going to be all NBA by his third season. I was really high on him going to the draft, and I love that we got him, but he even, passed some of my expectations for development. Chet was the number 2 pick. Like, he's the only guy that's like a top 10 solidified player that plays super regularly on this roster, because Kaysen's top 10, but he's not like a top 2 guy the way that Chet was. And then it's like, Isaiah Joe was cut by the Sixers and brought in, and Lou Dort was undrafted, and Aaron Wiggins was the 55th pick. I just think Sam Presti's one of the best to ever do it. And the way that he assembled this roster,
I think he has the case for the best.
Yeah,
I think he really does.
I think
it's hard to see any other answer.
I think his GOAT,
other than like Red Auerbach.
I think this, if we're talking about like the best skill, I think he might be the best margins GM that we've ever seen. Like, we talk about Wiggins at 55, and Jay Will is a 2nd-round pick, and AJ Mitchell was a 2nd-round pick, and Lou Dort's undrafted, and Isaiah Joe was cut. Like, finding all these guys and putting them together into this roster, and he was able to, he flipped Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. Like, I think he is so good at the margin stuff. We traded away, or we took on Derek Favors' contract back in 2021, and now we have the Jazz's pick if it lands outside the top 8. Like, it's just stuff that is years and years into the future that you don't even really think about. That's what I think he is specifically the GOAT at doing. He got 3 MVPs in the draft. And some people argue, but they were all towards the top picks. You still have to select those guys. It's not like they were consensus number 1 overall selections. And,
yeah.
What are you saying?
I was going to say something, and then I realized it was wrong. I was going to say he could have drafted Hasheem the Beat. No, that was the pick after. Never mind.
And then the big moves to kind of get them over the hump, it was like Caruso and Hartenstein. It's not like they brought in an all-star type of player. Those guys make high-level impacts. I just don't think the Thunder are a super team. When I think super team, I think 2017 Golden State Warriors. Like, that's the team that comes to mind. And the Thunder, can, in today's era of more versatility, could like put up a fight against that team potentially. But you think about just the talent level of KD and Steph Curry, 2 top 5 players on the team at the same time, coming off 73 wins, adding Kevin Durant. Like, they are the best team of all time, in my opinion. But that also, to me, is like, that's what I picture.
I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, that's my argument as well. But that's a super team.
Yeah.
I don't think this Thunder team's a super team.
Yeah, I mean, I've argued that the 90s Bulls, the second three-peat, that I don't even consider them a super team. The 72-10 team, because I don't think Dennis Rodman was a top 10 player by then, especially if you go look at what his playoff numbers were. Not Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen was not a top 10 player by then when you go and look at what his playoff numbers were. He shot like 40% in the playoffs for 3 years in a row. Dennis Rodman was not quite what he was, And then it's like, if Michael Jordan's not there, they're not very good. And that's a similar thing with OKC. If you look at SGA's on-off offensive rating-wise, when Shea's on the floor, they have a 124 offensive rating. When he is off, they have a 112.4. The league average is 115.7. So, and the highest in the league, highest offensive rating is 122.9 from Denver. So, with Shea on the floor, best offense in the league. With him off of the floor, like the 26th best offense in the league.
Yeah.
Like, that's... You're telling me this would be the 26th best offense without your top player? I don't feel like that's a super team in that instance. What I think makes OKC so dominant is the defense is obviously super level. That is an unbelievably stacked defense. But the reason that the reason that team works is the defense is so good and Shea is unfucking believable. And the rest of the offense after that isn't anything special. In fact, I would argue there are a lot of pretty substantial issues on that end of the floor, specifically in their half-court offense, that I think is the key catalyst in why they were not more dominant on their title run. Because, like, the Denver series shouldn't have gone 7. The Pacers series shouldn't have gone 7. But in each of those series, there were 1 or 2 games where they just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Like, they couldn't throw a pebble into the ocean standing on a boat. Like that, they just couldn't hit dick. And it's like, yeah, Shea is the offensive engine to a degree that I just don't think it's a super team if one player defines one side of the ball to such an insane degree.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much Shea does for this offense. If they don't watch the Thunder semi-regularly, maybe you only watch them in the playoffs, or, just take a look at box scores.
He only gets to the free throw line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a free throw merchant. So, oh my, I'm so glad that you're the person doing this podcast with. Thank God. Shea is one of the best offensive players ever. One of the best, just strictly from a scoring perspective. It's very rare that we've ever seen a scorer on the level that Shea is. And the reason this Thunder offense works so consistently is because, knock down some threes.
Because he's consistent.
And yeah, and Shea's maybe the most consistent scorer ever. He's in that type of conversation.
When is Shea scoring under 20? It doesn't happen.
It does. He's going to break Wilt's record in 11 games. He's 11 games away from breaking Wilt's record for most 20-plus point games in a row. Like, he's currently at 120. Wilt's record is, I think, 126, and Shea is at like I think he just hit 116. So his lowest scoring game this year, he had 20 versus Houston. Yeah, and that was a game that they were sending literally triple teams at him every single night.
Dude,
he hasn't scored less than 20 since, I think, the third game of last season against the Spurs. Like, that's the last time he scored less than 20.
He's played 42 games this year. 12 of them he has less than 30. That's fucking bonkers.
And he's doing it on
He
has a 67 true shooting percentage. Like, it's very rare that you ever see a player that plus, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but you never see a player who scores this much, is this dominant, is this efficient, and this consistent, and also doesn't turn the ball over. He's averaging 2 turnovers per game. Like, the Thunder are able to generate such efficient offense at times because Shea is one of the most efficient offensive engines ever, because every single possession, the Thunder really aren't turning the ball over. It's either Shea getting up a shot, and pretty much any shot is a good shot for him. He's generating one for a teammate, and the Thunder just aren't really giving the ball away that much when he's out there. So they're getting shots. Every time down the floor, the Thunder are getting a shot, and that is so valuable because you turn it over. Not only do you now give the opposing team a very valuable transition opportunity, but you don't get a chance at scoring. Shea just doesn't allow that ever.
Yeah, because the Thunder are almost always going to win the turnover battle because the defense is going to generate a bunch of them. And then offensively, because Shea is the lead handler 90% of the time, he's not going to turn the ball over. So it's just, you have that inherently built into damn near every game, is that you're going to win that side of it. And that is why, like, they managed, I ran the numbers on second and third options on championship teams for the 2020s. J-Dub and Chet in 2025, or in that run, by far the worst shooting second and third option in terms of what the numbers they objectively put up, regardless of if you want to say they're better shooters than their percentages were. Regardless, they were terrible shooting the ball. The team in general wasn't very good in that department, but the defense is so dominant and Shea is so good. But I think if one side of the ball is defined so much by one guy to that degree, to where it's like either you're the best offense with him or nearly the worst without him, I just don't think that can be a super team. And to give it credit where it's due, J-Dub and Chet are very good players, but I wouldn't say they are anywhere close to like the most ideal second and third option next to Shea. They are just talented as hell, very good on defense, and still good second and third options to get the job done. But like, it's not like J-Dub and Chet are top 10 players in the NBA or really anywhere near it.
Yeah, that's kind of my perspective as well with the Shea stuff. You talk about, like, if Shea, I think you said we'd be like a 48-ish win team without Shea. I think it's lower than that. I think we're about 500 without Shea.
I was being generous.
Yeah, I think the defense is enough to go ahead and give the team some wins, and, with more opportunities for, like, say, to AJ, for example, to handle, like, guys would develop, get skills. I always hate the conversation of, oh, where would they be without this? Because it's so hard to tell. It's such a big what if, but it does feel like this Thunder team would really, especially collapse in the offensive department. And it also helps too with Shea. Like, he, not only is he this hyper efficient offensive engine, but he also holds up on defense. Like, he's a good defender. So you don't have like a hole to go ahead and attack on that defensive end. That's why, there's the people that were like, oh, Luka would have, dominated in the playoffs with this Thunder team. I don't think so, because they would have attacked Luka, and Luka is not the same efficient offensive engine. He's a less efficient scorer than Shea. He's a better playmaker than Shea, but he turns the ball over a lot more. He doesn't knock down shots with the consistency that Shea does, and he's more susceptible to potential stinkers, while Shea, it's like every night you're going to get 30 points.
Mm-hmm. There's also something to be said for, like, because Shea doesn't turn the ball over, there are far less fast break opportunities. Like, they just limit transition a lot by the fact that they just do not turn it over. We've came to the same conclusion. I don't think they're a super team. I completely understand feeling that they are. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, like, I get it. I understand where you're coming from.
If a duck talked, I'd be a little more concerned than, like, I don't think it's a duck then. That's probably like a human posing as a duck. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck,
I got nothing.
I guess, is that even a saying? Is it walks and talks like a duck even a saying?
It is. I didn't just make that up. I'm not like schizophrenic.
I'm Googling walks like, oh wait, okay, hold on. Okay, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck. Yeah, I wouldn't quite say ducks talk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but also, like, I do think there is something to be said for, like, the definition needing an adjustment, because there's depth is so much more important that we're like, you could argue that the Suns last year, depending on how you feel about Devin Booker, but if you wanted to be kind of loose with the definition of superstar, you could argue that that was a team with 2 superstars. Didn't mean dick when the rest of the roster doesn't work at all. So it's complicated. And I think it just depends on your definition. Obviously, OKC is an all-time great team, but I don't think being an all-time great team inherently equals super team. Like I said earlier, I don't feel like the 72-10 Bulls were a super team. That's second best record of all time and the only one that actually achieved it, that going all the way. Still, that's not a super team to me. I wanted to move on to most improved player and who we think should walk away with that award, because this year the field is kind of crazy. I can't remember a time where most improved player was this stacked. I feel like there's been a lot of guys who are really breaking outside of the mold of what they were known for this year, in a way that, like, I feel like there's been a broader discussion about players being defined into roles and then not being able to blossom outside of them. And I don't know, on one hand, I think there is some truth to that. On the other, I do feel like role players are asked to do so much more, specifically in the creation department, like, not necessarily take the ball up, do a tween step back, but, like, attack off of the catch, make smart cuts, things like that, where, like, there is opportunity to showcase what you can do in a way where I honestly feel like role players in the past were more limited in their ability to show off what they can do. But at the same time, of course, we have seen so many guys this year who, given the opportunity to do more, did more and showcase that they probably should have been doing more for a while.
Yeah, I think it partially comes back to the fact that the talent level is just higher in the NBA now than it's ever been. And so you have that higher baseline to the point where all someone needs is the right circumstances, the right role to really break out like that. In the past, you'd have a lot of moments, like we talked about Jeremy Grant, the Pistons earlier, where he was like an MIP type candidate when he went over there, but he's just, now insane, a lot more volume. It's not really like he's producing all that much more. He's just been given opportunity. Now we're getting guys that are, you talk about Ryan Rollins, for example, who has been given more opportunity, but he's doing it on similar efficiency to what he was doing in limited opportunity. And you're seeing so much more growth from him. Like, he's somebody that is, I also think, we talk about the new CBA and team building. You have to get a lot more creative with how you're using pieces. I feel like there are a lot of situations in the NBA right now, a lot of teams that are almost in transition phases where they're trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? What's our identity? I mean, some of the top candidates like Keontae over in Utah, like they're trying to kind of get back to relevancy. They've been trying to, push with Keontae. In the first couple seasons, he was really, really rough. And now this season, he's like one of the better offensive guards in basketball so far. You talk about the Hawks with like Jalen Johnson, and they are now transitioning away from Trae Young, trading him to the Wizards, but he's had the opportunity to go ahead and thrive, do more with the ball in his hands. Michael Porter Jr.'s dealt away. He's doing all this stuff.
Yeah, I think most improved player, the way that I've always looked at it, it's like there's a line between improvement and opportunity. And a big gripe I've always had with this award historically has been dudes who had this projection of being a star level player. And by year 3, they were pretty good. And then year 4, they make that star leap. And I'm like, I don't think that is really what that award should be. Like, there needs to be a breaking of expectation, I think, should be very foundational to the way that award is divvied out. But let me read out some candidates for you, because you touched on a few of them, but like, I really want to highlight this list is crazy. And I went on, I was looking at like what the line looks like, what the odds are. And this is like 11 or 12 names. It goes like 20 deep, where there's like guys who legitimately have a case, but I just went with the top ones. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Keontae George, who you mentioned, Colin Gillespie, Dylan Brooks, Denny Abdia, Jalen Johnson, Michael Porter Jr., Peyton Watson, Jalen Duren, Ryan Rollins, and Anthony Black. I think all of those guys, there is at least somewhat of a case. And I don't even think that there's like a standout among them. There are guys who have bigger box score leaps than others, but like all of them, I think, have a very real, like, yeah, this guy got a lot better. And it's not just Jalen Johnson is maybe the only one where I'm like, we started to see this last year, not to the extent that he's been doing it lately. You know, he's damn near averaged a triple double for like a month. But regardless, there's just so much improvement in the league right now. The top 3 guys are Denny, Jalen, and Keontae. I personally wouldn't go with Jalen just because, like I mentioned, I do think there's enough pre-established stuff that I would rather go for like a Nickeil, who would just never thought he was going to be a 20-point per game scorer, or Duren, who's taken a huge leap, Dylan Brooks. Colin Gillespie is someone who I also feel like should get a little bit more credit, but that's also one that could be in that is it opportunity versus improvement, because he never really got a real opportunity up until this year.
Yeah, like it's an interesting race. I think it comes down to a lot of what you value. Are you one of those people that wants to see or like, not a lot, we're talking about the opportunity thing, like decent opportunity, but now they're maybe more efficient in a bigger role, like a Ryan Rollins. Do you want to see that fringe star, like they're kind of breaking out a little bit, jump to an all-star like a Denny Avdia or like a Jalen Johnson? Or is it just like new opportunity, which I feel like is kind of the more, or not opportunity, but new environment, which I feel like is kind of some of the old school, typical most improved player type stuff with a Nickeil, who I think should be getting a lot more love for most improved player this season. He's someone that I can't believe has not been really discussed at all as that type of guy. I mean, he's averaging 20.7 on 45% from the field, 38% from 3, with 1.1 steals a game. He's been ridiculous. He's shooting incredible volume. His previous career high was 12.8 all the way back in 2022, and that was just 50 games with the Pelicans, and he shot 37% from the field, 31% from 3. Like, Nickeil has been unbelievable, and Jalen Johnson has gotten most of the hype, most of the love, understandably. Like, he's a bona fide, solidified all-star and maybe even an all-NBA player. But what Nickeil has done, I think, is just as, if not more impressive, because I was kind of expecting this from Jalen. I didn't expect this from Nickeil. I didn't expect Keontae to be as good as he is now. The first couple years of his career, he can't finish through contact. He can't create separation like that, getting downhill. And now he's getting to the paint whenever he wants, and he's hitting step back threes. Yeah, he couldn't hit a 3. It's like the shot kind of looks like it's there, but now he's ridiculously good. And I know the Jazz aren't that great, but I still think Keontae belongs, heavily into that conversation. And Anthony Black too. I mean, what Anthony Black has done, he has been one of the saving graces of this Magic season. Paolo's not been that good. Franz has missed time. Jalen Suggs has missed time. Like, AB has gone ahead and, I mean, he dunked on 4 people overseas the other day against the Grizzlies, and he's now putting up 16, 47% from the field, 35% from 3. As a guy last year that was putting up a really inefficient 9.4 points per game, you kind of have a little bit of everything. You have the young guy, Anthony Black, who's maybe doing more than it was expected. You've got a guy in a new environment with Nickeil. Even Michael Porter Jr., everybody's like, wow, the Nuggets won the Michael Porter Jr. trade, and now Michael Porter Jr. is one of the best offensive players in the entire Eastern Conference. And he's like the prize of the trade deadline, potentially. Him or like a Nickeil. You've got young guys.
I would label that a win-win deal for sure.
Yeah, I think there's value on both sides, but it's, at the time, everybody's like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense for the Nuggets, and now you can question it a little bit, because it's like, look at MPJ. Not that they were going to know that MPJ was going to do this over there in Brooklyn. There's no way to know that. it's really impressive what like he and Nikhil have done in new spots, and Denny and Jalen are like your, jumping up to an all-star type of players. Is a little bit of everything in this race. And then why, like, Dylan Brooks is averaging 20 points per game. What the hell is going on?
I want to bring back Nikhil Alexander-Walker. He is averaging 11.3 more points than he did last year. And he's doing that with a 1% better than last year true shooting. So he's increased his scoring volume by 11 points per game and become more efficient in the process. He was always a guy who I was like certifiably a fake shooter, like one of those guys who shoots a good percentage in the regular season, but when the playoffs come around, dudes dare him to shoot and he does not deliver. Like literally last year was better because he shot 35% overall. I think there was like one series where he was a disaster and one series where he was pretty good.
It wasn't the conference finals. He was frying us. Like he decided that was the series. Yeah. He was hitting. That wasn't even just the threes. He was in transition hitting like the Michael Jordan layup against us every single time down the court. It was crazy.
Yeah. The year before that, he shot 29% for the entire playoffs. While the seasons before that, during the regular season, he shot 39 and 38%. So if you would have told me that guy is taking 8 threes a game, I would be like, okay, well, he's probably bricking them. But no, 3-point percentage is slightly up from last year while nearly doubling his volume on those shots. Like, I really do think that he needs more praise in this conversation. Denny Avdia being the leader makes sense, absolutely. He's up by basically 9.3 points per game, 3 assists, an extra 1.5 turnovers with that, but still 1.2 turnovers. But he's been getting some free throw merchant accusations lately. He's obviously been much better. Part of me being a hater, I am like, the offense isn't getting a whole lot better with you doing all this, but I don't know. It kind of feels like a placeholder a lot of the times with them. I don't know that the most ideal version of the Trailblazers has him doing as much as he is, but he is still doing it individually. Like, give him credit for that. So I do think, me personally, I don't like that Jalen Johnson is in this. And that's not an anti-Jalen Johnson thing. I hope that's not interpreted as that way. It's just that, like, yeah, I believed in Jalen Johnson. I thought that he was capable of something fairly similar to what he's doing right now. And I think a lot of it just comes from ignorance, like people just not really knowing much about him from last year. Like, I felt like there was a similar thing with a lot of the reaction that I saw to the Trae Young trade, where I'm just like, did you guys just not watch the Hawks at all this year or the last like year or two? Like, the writing has been on the wall, but you have to tune in and see the wall in order to see the writing. And I just think a lot of people haven't done that. So I think there's a lot of people who are like, holy shit, this Jalen Johnson guy. And I'm like, yeah, this Jalen Johnson guy, fucking pay attention, clock in. It's been there the whole time.
Yeah, Jalen's one of those
Michael
guys
Porter.
That, I mean, coming into this season, I can't remember if he was my pick or he was someone who I like pegged as a potential option, and I was like, I think he could do a lot, and he is. I mean, 23 per game, 10.2, 8 assists. Those are all career highs. Career high in field goal percentage outside of his rookie season. True shooting, I imagine, is the highest it's ever been. Take a look at these numbers. Like, he's been amazing. I will say, as a huge fan of Jalen Johnson, the defense has taken a big step back. He's just been bad on defense this season, which is understandable when you think about the offensive load that he's being asked to carry with all the injuries that they've had to, trade before he got traded and Kristaps Porzingis. Like, they've asked Jalen Johnson to do a lot, score a lot, play make, do everything. So I get that his defense is down, but that is one thing that I feel like never comes up in most improved player talks. Like, Denny also had kind of been a pretty decent defender. He's just not been very good defensively this season.
I would argue that's kind of what he was known for earlier on.
Yeah, like that was his thing.
More than offense.
In Washington, it's like, oh, he can be kind of this two-way wing, and he's just not really a defender anymore, which happens to a lot of players. I mean, even Nikhil, I don't think his defense has taken the biggest step back in the world. Like, he's still okay on that end, but he's being asked to do a lot more.
I think among this group, I think he's the guy who's maintained on that end the most.
Yeah. Like, I mean, shout out to Peyton Watson, by the way. We didn't even mention him, taking a look at the odds. He's in
Yeah.
that conversation. I can't believe the stuff that he's been doing in the absence of Jokic. And he's not going to win because Jokic is going to come back and everybody's going to get healthy and those numbers are going to tick way down. Like he's not going to be there. But I do think his improvement should be noted at least. But yeah, the defense thing I feel like never really comes up with MIP. I wish like Jalen Duren has been great defensively. He was not great the first couple years.
Yeah, I would argue his defensive improvements are more significant than his offensive improvements. But yeah, you mentioned Peyton Watson recently. Let me look up his numbers. Yeah, his numbers are like kind of heavily hampered by the first 15 or so games of the year. But since then, he is averaging 17 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 stocks, 42% from 3, 57.5% on his 2-pointers. He will not win the award because he won't be able to keep up this production. However, it does mean a lot for that team and what their playoffs look like, that even if he's not, a starter anymore, he's just so much more of a weapon off of the bench, where the last 2 years, whenever he would get into the playoffs, you're kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, he's a really good defensive player, but the 3-ball's not there. Teams are going to sag off of him big time. He's shooting the 3-ball well enough this year that I do think, because he has the reputation as a non-shooter, you kind of have to break that reputation in the playoffs before people actually really take you seriously from outside. But I think he's been so good that he will prove that, you can't just leave me completely wide open. And with that being the same case for Aaron Gordon, that it makes Denver all the more terrifying. I do feel like Denver this year and the Spurs this year are better than any of the teams that the Thunder faced last year. On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you about that? About them potentially knocking y'all off?
It's more the Nuggets than the Spurs. I think the Thunder beat the Spurs in a series. I'm honestly not super worried about that. Yeah. It's just because with San Antonio, it's a situation. I almost see them a little bit as us 2 years ago, where they've got a top 5 player. Shea took that jump and was All-NBA first team the year prior. He was in MVP talks up until the end of the season. And they were we were the 1 seed. We lost round 2 to the Dallas Mavericks, who were just more complete and ready to go ahead and compete that way. I think we're better than that Mavericks team. I also think the Spurs team is right up there with that Thunder squad. The issue, I think, their shooting is pretty clearly an issue for them. Not that ours is the most hyper consistent, but they don't have that consistent offensive engine the way that Shea is.
I don't think it's any more of an issue for them than it is for OKC. I wouldn't say it's any worse.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's I think with the Thunder, even though Lou Dort's shooting can be very up and down, he is has been a pretty decent shooter. There just aren't many guys. When I take a look at the Spurs, I think Stephon Castle's really going to struggle when it comes to shooting in the playoffs. I think he's a guy they're going to be willing to sag off of.
He struggles with shooting in the regular season.
Exactly. I also think his turnover issues are really going to be exacerbated. De'Aaron Fox has slipped a little bit from the earlier season, hyper efficiency. Dylan Harper, I just think there's a lot of youth on that team. Also, Harrison Barnes is their power forward. It's just not going to work like that. If they're going to make a move at the deadline, they need to upgrade him ASAP. Maybe it'll be something they'll address till the offseason. But it's just one of those things.
They're a team I wouldn't hate trading for Michael Porter Jr.
Me.
That would be fun.
As a Thunder fan, I would hate that. That would suck. But in terms of just team building, yeah, that would be huge for them. But I think the Spurs, even though they've given the Thunder issues, it's definitely not an easy series. But I think ultimately that's a moment where the experience and Wemby, as good as he is and as crazy of games as he can have offensively, I just don't think a 7-game series against that defensive pressure, he's going to be up to his usual standards. And I think there's going to be some slippage from some of that guard play. For the Nuggets, meanwhile, they're 29-14. They've been winning games with Jokic injured. And how good Jamal Murray has been so far this season. Aaron Gordon's awesome. Peyton Watson has taken a step forward. They've got some real 3-point shooting now that I think can further give the Thunder issues if we send extra help to Jokic. Last year, they couldn't make the Thunder pay all that often. They were missing a lot of those outside looks. Now, if it's...
They were using Russell Westbrook as a shooter.
Exactly.
As baffling.
Yeah.
That was Russ's last parting gift for the OKC Thunder was, I'm going to take 5 threes a game in the playoffs. You're welcome.
Yeah. And they showed last year they can also defensively scheme pretty well against us. And even though that's a weaker end for them. And I think having AJ Mitchell now makes things a little bit easier for the Thunder, assuming J-Dub is back. But that's also the thing. More concerning than anything is I'm just worried about our health. I mean, J-Dub is now out for a little bit, and even when he's been healthy, the wrist, is he going to be ready by the time the playoffs roll around to be himself? Hartenstein's missed a little bit of time with a calf injury. I don't think that's going to be an issue by the time the playoffs roll around, but it's an issue for...
I think his impact is underrated.
Yeah.
Hartenstein.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
I think a big part of the reason they were losing recently is because teams were putting a wing on Chet and then just having their center roam off of Lou Dort or Caruso and just being like, you're not coming to the paint, kick out to the guy who I'm not scared of shooting wise. And then Chet like isn't really able to punish the mismatch like that. I do really like the Thunder. Chet Holmgren is the exception. I can't stand that guy.
I absolutely love Chet.
I can recognize his talent, but the way he plays like a soft-handed weenie a lot of the time, and it drives me crazy.
Oh, it's funny. Chet mostly kind of goes back to that. Like when it's Chet as the clear second option, he's just way more aggressive. Like when J-Dub's been back for a little bit, it's been a little bit more hesitating, and specifically against the Spurs, like in a series, Chet's got to stay aggressive. I liked a lot in the win that we had, even though Chet didn't score a bunch of points, he was still attacking. He forced at least one, I think maybe a couple of fouls on Wemby, got them in rotation. Like that's the aggression. He doesn't have to put up an efficient like 15 to 20 a game against Wemby. That's really hard to do for anybody, but as long as he's aggressive and forcing Wemby to, worry about him and stay locked onto him, I think that's a big reason why the Thunder were a lot better offensively against the Spurs in their most recent matchup. But anyways, like the health is something I'm worried about. It's been an issue we've seen pop up for recent NBA champions. It feels like every recent champion, like no one repeats in the NBA anymore, and nobody even really makes it out of the second round. Like we haven't seen a champion make it out of the second round in a minute. And I think a lot of that is the health, the strain that is put on you from playing all the way until June and then coming back the next season and having to immediately go ahead and, lock back in and play at this high pace because everybody's now hunting you. Like the teams around you get better. That's my main concern right now is the health of the team and specifically Jalen Williams. But if I had to rank, I think the two biggest challengers in the West, I guess I would say, are the Nuggets and the Spurs, but I think the Nuggets and the Thunder, I see the Nuggets as like a tier above the Spurs when it comes to threats, in my opinion.
I'm kind of split. I am more high on the Spurs against OKC than you seem to be, and it's because Wemby is kind of the equalizer in terms of the defensive advantage. Obviously, Wemby's not going to play all 48 minutes, so what the Spurs look like defensively whenever he is sitting on the floor sitting on the bench will be a huge marker in that series. But like Wemby's defensive rating when he is on the floor is what the OKC's overall defensive rating is. Like more or less when Wemby's on the floor, that defense is just as good as OKC's. So at that point, it becomes about what your offense can do. And while I do trust SGA as a scorer more than Wemby as a scorer, when it gets to the second and third guy, then it's a little bit more shaky ground where I'm like, is De'Aaron Fox a better scorer than J-Dub? I think so. Less physical, obviously, but like in terms of like spacing the floor, being super, super quick, really, really effective ball handler. Like I do think that they can win those minutes. I think they can win Wemby's minutes is my thing. It's gotta be like, especially the Spurs gotta be smart about that rotation of like maybe trying their best to have like if Shea's on the floor, Wemby's on the floor. So you don't have Shea being able to attack a Wemby-less Spurs defense, because I think that would be a disaster for the Spurs. That's probably where they lose. But like his ability to just deter people from going to the basket at all, Shea turns into just a jump shooter at that point. He basically doesn't get to the rim at all when Wemby is on the floor because nobody gets to the rim when Wemby's on the floor. So I do think that factor. I don't think the Nuggets have a shot in hell of being a defense that is anywhere near as good as OKC's. They will be a better offense. For sure. I don't even think that's in question just because Jokic is Jokic and the supporting cast is a better supporting cast offensively speaking. But I think just because there is such no one, OKC's superpower is the defense. So if there is another team out there capable of matching that superpower, I think that is where things start to get hairy for the Thunder. So I personally, I lean the Spurs actually being slightly more of a threat. The other thing is that their ball handlers are not as distressed as most are when they play against OKC, because they, like Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle. Castle has his turnover issues, but that's mostly when it comes to like passing the ball. In terms of keeping the ball when he's dribbling it, he still does a good job of that. And it's because they're so damn physical. Like you bump into those guys, they're not just going to start cowering in the way that a lot of other teams do when OKC starts to get physical. They're like, oh, we're being physical. Bet I'm matching that energy. And I think that factor, and then the Wemby defense, that's why I'm like, I do think the Spurs are a very serious threat. I agree Harrison Barnes isn't going to be the move, especially because he seemingly forgot how to shoot this year. I do think they do need to make some kind of move, and I'm inclined to believe that they will. The Spurs have been, in this Wemby era post Greg Popovich, have been more aggressive than the Spurs are known to be historically. So I could see them potentially getting in on somebody. I don't think Michael Porter's the answer, because I can't think of a less Spurs player in the league
definitely doesn't
right now.
fit the Spurs mentality, but yeah, I mean the volume shooting
it would be
huge
a Dennis Rodman-esque addition.
Yeah, it's one thing with the Spurs. I do agree. I think the guards match the physicality pretty well. I do wonder with Wemby, because that's one of the things that I think the Thunder did really well in the most recent matchup, was they were really physical with Victor Wembanyama, and it was like Caruso and Kenrich and Jada, like all these guys getting up in his face, and he doesn't really have the strength to back down guys. You know, he can just shoot over everybody, but Wemby specifically was settling for a lot of those longer mid-range jumpers late in the shot clock, you know, trying to back down the smaller defender, but not getting quite the space that he wants. So I do think that is one thing that the Thunder have that works really well, and they didn't utilize to the best of their ability in previous matchups, because they were putting guys on Wemby like smaller defenders, having Chet roam, but in this game, it was like Chet for a few possessions, and then Jada, and then Caruso, and then Kenrich. Like they kept throwing different looks, and it was hard for him to really gauge and get into a rhythm. And that is one thing, obviously, the Thunder do better than anybody, is having those disruptive guys who will be physical with you, who will get their hands on the ball, force turnovers. Like nobody plays as frantic, chaotic defense as the Thunder do. And I just wonder about those younger ball handlers, specifically in a longer series with Castle and Harper, how they're going to hold up in that setting. Because with the Nuggets, like they're going to generate good offense against almost anybody, and Jokic is such a problem where like we put Caruso on him again in game 7 and it worked extremely well. Would that work over a whole series? I don't really know if it would, because it's Nikola Jokic, and now that that's something they've learned from, and Jamal Murray just being as good as he is now, like that is the big thing that I think worries me if the Thunder aren't going to come out of the West, because the Nuggets now have Jamal Murray, who's, you know, he's putting up like 25 a game on insane efficiency. He's been so good.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't he pretty damn good in the series last year?
He was pretty good, but I don't think the efficiency was anything too crazy, if I remember correctly. And we were able to play more aggressive defense. Not that we're leaving Jamal Murray, but on Jokic. And like the key did come down to the role play. Like Shea played better than Jokic in that series, and the role players really couldn't shoot for Denver all that much, especially, you know, in game 7. And I think their shooters are more reliable now, even though Cam Johnson's had his ups and downs, like, you know, Tim Hardaway Jr. It's just,
yeah, you're right. I don't know what I hallucinated. His stats versus OKC were not all that good.
Yeah, so he wasn't
40% from the field, 30% from 3.
Like I do think having
points.
like a Lou Dort and a Kaysen Caruso, like those guys can definitely neutralize Jamal Murray a little bit. But if he is more effective, which I would imagine he would be in a second series against OKC than a first one, because again, his numbers weren't that great. I think that's kind of the equalizer there. I think it's hard to beat the Thunder just straight up being like, we're going to out defense you. The Spurs are the team that can come the closest to doing that because of Wemby. But I think if you're going to beat the Thunder, it's got to be like, we're going to get that defense really in rotation, and we're just going to like shoot you out of the gym, which happens sometimes with the Thunder. I mean, like, well, I think game 3 it was against Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals, where we just got obliterated. Like they just got hot shooting, and it just, you know, we couldn't keep up with it. I think the Nuggets have the ability to do that, potentially to beat the Thunder rather than anybody else. I think they're our biggest threat. Like if you ask me on pretty much any day, even after we lost the Spurs 3 times in a row, just because they have Like outside of Jokic is the only guy that when he's on the court, it's like, okay, is he the better player than Shea? Like Shea at minimum is the second best player in basketball. So having Shea versus Jokic, I just think it's gonna be hard for the Spurs to generate consistent offense against that Thunder defense in a playoff series.
I think the big X factors in a potential Spurs series is Dylan Harper and Castle's ability to handle and shoot. But the other thing is like, to be completely honest, I am just maybe a smidge, maybe 5% disappointed in Wemby as of late, and obviously he's been partially just been recovering from an injury. But I felt like his I'm just gonna aggressively back you down and out physical you around the rim mentality has dissipated as the season has gone along. Part of that is like a stamina thing. Being able to maintain that play style for super long isn't easy. So I think the other X factor would be like, is that something that he's been keeping in his back pocket for when the playoffs come around? Because if you get him with the type of energy that he had in that first game of the year versus Anthony Davis, where he was like, I'm going to ruin this man's whole career. Like if he brings that, like, I'm 7'7", get over it, bitch type energy, I do think that can be enough to push through.
That's
but
what he did against Minnesota
do think
a few days ago. Like that was down the stretch. It's like Anthony Edwards just hitting everything.
That was a great game.
Yeah,
that was one of the best games of the year.
For sure. And Wemby's just like, okay, you're going to score 55. Cool. I'm just going to, every time Ant got a bucket, Wemby got the exact same bucket on the other end. I think that's the kind of stuff, like he's got to be able to do that and try and keep up with Shea. He's not going to keep up with Shea, like from straight scoring output.
Yeah, probably not this year, at least.
Yeah.
Probably not this year.
Yeah, like we talk about future Wemby.
Still
we'll
something big on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I do think if you're trying to beat the Thunder, I think the model is you should double and triple down on shooting. Like the Thunder, as great as they are, their biggest weakness to me, and it might even not necessarily be the thing that they're categorically get the worst grade in, but it's like one of the most important things to get a good grade in is that shooting. They have a lot of games where they are just bricking it up, and they have a lot of guys who are like, we're gonna see if you can actually shoot like that. Like, we're gonna leave Lou Dort open. They'll even leave Chet open periodically because he has a kind of slow release. So it's like, yeah, it might take him long enough to wind up for it that like Wemby can get out there and contest it. So if I am the Spurs, I would probably be like, yeah, we need some shooting. We need to get some snipers out there. They obviously have Champagny and Vassell, but like I floated the Michael Porter Jr. idea. They should. That actually makes a lot of sense. They have the contracts to make that work, but whatever it might be, like I do think they could, if they had a 30+ minute per game knockdown shooter on that team to put in that starting lineup, I think that's where it gets to real scary hours. But I think you're right where the Spurs I do think they can equalize the defense at least better than anybody else can. But if it comes down to, okay, who can be the better offense under these ridiculous defensive pressures, it will probably be the Thunder because Shea is Shea.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about the shooters real quick. Like, two of the last guys to torch us in a series, Aaron Gordon, PJ Washington, Aaron Nesmith also like went insane in the finals. That type of mold is the type of player that I think gives us the biggest issues, where it's somebody that is like an athletic 3 or 4 that you can put in the corner and they're just going to knock those shots down, because that's what we give up. Like the Thunder most concede corner threes because we rotate over so much. There's so much ball pressure. Chet, getting out to the perimeter, then diving to the rim. When someone goes ahead and attacks the closeout, they swing over to the corner. Like their teams are going to get semi-open corner threes, and to beat the Thunder, you have to hit those somewhat consistently. And like Aaron Gordon did that a lot in the series, and PJ Washington, I mean, literally couldn't miss against us against Dallas. That's part of the reason why the Pacers were able to just outshoot us some games. And, the Thunder were able to win a game where they hit 4 threes in game 4 of the NBA Finals because Shea was ridiculous and he's able to bail out the team sometimes. And J-Dub and Chet made some big plays as well. But if you're going to beat the Thunder, I think having that shooting, it's really hard to beat the Thunder, in my opinion, in a series if you just can't shoot reliably. Because the Thunder, even though they're not a great shooting team, we're going to have some games where we're just on fire. Like the Thunder, I think are a decent shooting team, just really inconsistent. There are some games we kind of hit anything, and then like yesterday against Cleveland, we shot like 50% from three on like 49 attempts. Like they have those games, and it's because Shea sets guys up for such good opportunities. But like you have to be able to take advantage of those games that you have as an opponent against the Thunder, like the Nuggets were able to do to keep that series competitive. The Pacers did that so well. They generated those great corner looks. Luka's obviously able to do that as well with the Mavericks in that series. I think that's kind of the recipe if you're going to keep up. And I just don't know if the Spurs shooting is there. If they trade for Michael Porter Jr., like that's terrifying for him playing at this level to be that guy for them. I think it would make the matchup so much more difficult. If they added MPJ, I might change my mind.
Yeah. At the very least, I would put them over Denver. And the thing that is interesting about Denver as well is I don't think they're going to be able to be playing off of Aaron Gordon the way that they did. Like, obviously, he was hitting those shots, but, like, it wasn't to a massively detrimental degree. I think they're going to go into that series planning on sticking to him and not treating him as the guy that you sag off on. If Peyton Watson is also hitting those threes, like, that has been the answer for beating Denver. The way that Minnesota beat Denver was that they put Cat on Jokic and they had Rudy Gobert just roam off of Aaron Gordon. And Aaron Gordon could not punish them in that series. But if he's a 40% three-point shooter on relatively high volume, especially for being a non-shooter most of his career, and you have to respect him from out there, and they have Peyton Watson off of the bench and you have to respect him from out there, I don't know what the hell's going on with Christian Brown, but he's the sag-off guy if he ends up playing big minutes, but he's kind of been dealing with injuries all year. But other than him, they don't seem to have a sag-off guy anymore. And, like, that was the one hole in the greatest offense of the century. So the fact that that hole is gone does make them really terrifying, and it will be interesting to see. I really hope we can manage to get both. It would be awesome. I'm sure you wouldn't like it, but it would be dope if we could somehow get a Spurs and Nuggets versus OKC series. I think that would go hard as hell. Not that a Spurs Nuggets series wouldn't go hard as hell because, like, Wemby versus Jokic is just awesome in its own right. You know, the defending champions of it all, that should be the best team. OKC, if it's versus Spurs versus Denver or both, either way, those are the real finals. That is the series that will define who actually wins the championship, because I really just don't think that anybody outside of those three, and then maybe the Rockets if they figure it out on the defensive end, but it doesn't really seem like they're going to, or at least we haven't seen much indication lately, and their fourth quarter offense is fucking awful.
Doesn't exist.
I don't think they're going to do it, but I'm still holding out hope because we're only halfway through the season. But those three teams, I just really don't see anybody beating them. And I think whoever comes out of the West wins the title. So those series will hopefully, they should be, barring injuries getting in the way, all-time great playoff series, or series individually if it's just one. So yeah, I didn't mean for that to turn into a whole 20-minute tangent, but hey.
As much OKC as we want to talk, I do want to ask you real quick, who is your favorite in the East right now? If you got to pick someone to come out of the East right now, because I've got no idea what's going. The Knicks just suck right now, so.
Yeah, I am a little bit at a point where I'm just like, getting a title out of a Cat and Brunson duo might just be a Herculean task. I think the answer there is they need to find someone who can do Mitchell Robinson shit without being Mitchell Robinson, because he can only play like 20-ish minutes. But I suggested that the Knicks trade for Jarrett Allen, and you would think that I like showed up, like there were Knicks fans outside of my door with pitchforks. Like, I could not believe how much I kicked the hornet's nest on that one. But like, I think they need to get some other defensive big man that they can play with Mitchell Robinson, or trade Mitchell Robinson for a guy like that who can play longer. If they don't, I don't think they can stand pat and get it done, because the thing is, their defensive rating when he is on the floor with Cat is so good that it truly does make up for the fact that Cat and Brunson are terrible defensively. But like, and also to give him credit, I feel like Brunson isn't even that terrible. He just is 6 foot. Like, that just is the way that it is. Cat has no fucking excuse. But my answer is Detroit. I think the answer is the top seed, which is maybe anticlimactic. The thing that's interesting, I was looking at the East standings earlier. It's a lot tighter than it's gotten increasingly tighter. There's a lot of teams that have been doing
Toronto
better.
at the 3 and 4 spot. I think they're only half a game ahead of Toronto at the 4 spot.
Not only that, they're like 2-3 games away from falling all the way to the 7th seed.
Yeah,
like the Knicks have the Knicks have a 58 win percentage. The Cavaliers have a 54.5% win percentage. So it's like 2-ish games, and there's a 25 win Knicks, 25 win Raptors, 23 win Sixers, 23 win Magic, 24 win Cavs. Like, and even the Heat are not too far off from the Cavs themselves. So like the standings could end up getting mixed around a lot. The Toronto Raptors, I think, are maybe my sleeper team this year, of like, people should probably take them a little bit more seriously than they are. But ultimately it will be among those top 3 teams. For Boston, I don't think that there's enough of a secondary firepower there outside of Jalen unless Jason Tatum comes back. So for me, I'm going to go Detroit. And if Detroit trades for a shooter, whether it be Trey Murphy, Michael Porter Jr., or just some other second option, maybe a Lauri Markkanen, that I do think starts. First of all, it would, for me, if they had Michael Porter Jr., they're the favorite in the East to me. Didn't realize Michael Porter Jr. was going to be like the main character of this
who would have
podcast.
thought it was like he got salary dumped in the offseason. It's like, like he's in Brooklyn now, and now here we are months later. It's like, oh my God, did you hear about Michael Porter Jr.? Well, Kuminga was our first main character, and then it was Michael Porter Jr.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they traded for MPJ, not only does that to me make them by far the favorites in the East, that would get them to a point where they're good enough that I'm like, they can make it a series in the finals. Wouldn't say they can win, but make it a series. And the big thing, like, Cade has a similar issue with Castle where it's like he can be a little turnover prone, but like, I think you need a really physical ball handler versus OKC, and Cade is about as physical as it gets. And then Jalen Duren is what he is defensively and offensively this year. I think Ron Holland and Asar Thompson, that whole situation is interesting. Holland's been getting more minutes and Asar's been getting less lately, so I'm not even sure what the plan there is. It does feel like you can't really play those guys together much at all, especially with Duren. Beef Stew can hit his threes, but like, I also don't think teams are going to stick to him that hard. So like, there are weaknesses there, absolutely, but they have one of the best defenses in the NBA, and I think Cade Cunningham is like the 6th best player in the NBA. So you have one of the top guys, you have a great defense. Jalen Duren might not be an all-star this year. He's like a borderline guy. I think there's certainly a case to be made, but like, I would like a better second option and a better shooter. That, I think, is what gets them over the top, but I still think I'm going to take them over the Knicks. I mean, they should have gone to game 7 versus the Knicks. Whether or not they would have won that game, I don't know if you remember that Tim Hardaway 3 that he was very clearly fouled on.
I was there at that game, actually.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one of the worst that was maybe the worst non-call of the entire playoffs. So unless I'm missing something obvious, don't crucify me. Memory is fickle.
I was going to mind off the bat.
But yeah, they're much better than they were last year, and they very easily could have pushed that team to the game 7. And I don't remember, the Knicks would have had home court advantage, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
so that would have been
a 3 versus 6.
Knicks 7.
But I mean, the Knicks got destroyed in game 7 against the Pacers the year prior in Madison Square Garden. Like, it's not a guarantee. For me, I think the Celtics and Pistons are in a tier of their own right now for me in the East. Like, the Celtics are one of those teams where it really does not feel like they should be. Like, I'm taking a look at them like, what do you mean Jaylen Brown's averaging 30 as their one option? And they've got the second best offense in the NBA without Jason Tatum. And it feels pretty clear to me he's going to come back at least. Jalen
averaging 30 is way less surprising to me than them being the second best offense.
The fact that I
predicted he would average like 29.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I figured it would kind of come at a consequence in a way of the ability to be a great offense. Thinking Basketball did a really good video recently talking about how Missoula recalibrated that offense based on Jalen as the first option instead of Jason. And yeah, I think Missoula is just one of the genius head coaches in the league, and that's a big reason why. But I do think the fact that your second options on that team are Peyton Pritchard and Derek White and Anthony Simons. Like, obviously, that's 3 guys, so they're not all the second option, but they kind of just share shots pretty evenly. 2 of those guys, I don't think you can play 35 minutes a game in the playoffs. So, like, I do think they're going to run into a wall where their offense isn't going to translate to the playoffs because it comes at such a consequence to the defense. So I do think Boston, they kind of need Jason Tatum's return, which I wouldn't do if I were him, but it seems like it's a very plausible thing. But that's the only way. I think Detroit is better and deeper without that happening. Or they could make a trade, obviously. They could also do something like that because they're in the position where they do want to be building for something next year, but it's also not like they're going for some young players in that equation. So, like, they could trade for a guy that helps right now and later, like if a Zubats deal could potentially be on the table, but the Clippers have been better lately, so probably not. But, like, this conversation gets more interesting after the trade deadline. I do think the East... I do think if those top 3 teams are smart, all of them will be trying to do something, and who ends up actually making the best move will probably define it, because I do think it's pretty close, and I don't want to completely throw the Knicks out of this just because they've been struggling a lot lately. I do think it is still in their capacity to pull this thing back together, but I'm certainly looking at them with a side eye right now. I can't blame you for that. If I had to pick a sleeper, I know I mentioned the Raptors. If the stars aligned, which they won't because they never have. If anything, the stars have aligned in the opposite direction forever.
I think I know what team you're talking about, yeah.
Philly.
Yeah, it's Philly.
Philly. Paul George, when he's played with Embiid, is averaging like 19 on good efficiency. Joel Embiid's been a lot better scoring the ball. They have Barlow and Bona, who has been taking on more of the physicality in the paint so that Embiid doesn't have to deal with that as much and is less likely to get injured. VJ Edgecomb's an amazing rookie. The only real major L has been not Emmanuel Quickly. That's the Raptors. Fucking Jared McCain. And Quinn Grimes has been good. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey's been a top 10 player this year. So, like, I do think there is a world where the stars align and it suddenly works out, and that could, like, what if Embiid is just like 90% peak Embiid? Paul George is shooting 40% from 3, playing solid defense, averaging like 16. Tyrese Maxey is Stephen Curry and Russell Westbrook in the same player, and you have shooting VJs. Like, there is a world where all of that works out, but luckily for the rest of the East and the NBA, it won't, because it's the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, it also doesn't help that they've just collapsed in the clutch a lot of games. Like, I don't know how I feel about Nick Nurse anymore as a coach, and feels like there are definitely some growing pains still for Maxey as this new one option. Like, he's still figuring out, okay, when do I defer? When do I take the shot? How do I set up my teammates? Like, what is the go-to? Because he doesn't really have that in-between game quite yet either. Like, he's a knockdown 3-point shooter. He's amazing getting to the rim, but that kind of like mid-range game is something you need as a one option a lot in today's NBA. Shea, of course, is one of the best mid-range shooters. And Ant said after the series against the Thunder, I got to be better at that. And now he's, really grown as that type of player. So I've also thought about Philly. I think there's a world where in the first round, I think they could beat the Raptors. If it was currently as is set up, I think they could beat the Raptors round 1. And then the Pistons are definitely the better team, but they're also really young and inexperienced. And it's like they
have weaknesses that are exploitable.
Yeah, the whole Eastern Conference feels like you could tell me most teams make it out of the East, and I could kind of see a pathway. Like the top 7, you could tell me pretty much any of them make it. And I'm like, there are a few teams other than, like, some teams I'm more surprised than others, but I'd be like, okay, like if they got this matchup and that one, yeah, I could kind of see it. Even like you get down to the Cavaliers, who are my pick to win the East this season. I just thought they're going to be really,
they've been better lately.
They've been better lately. Did get annihilated, yesterday against the Thunder. But when they've had guys kind of healthy, they've looked better. I don't know though. The vibes just feel bad in Cleveland at the moment. I thought Lonzo Ball was going to be so sick. I don't know if you watched the game or with audio or whatever. It turned to a blowout, so I don't blame you if you didn't. But like, there were audible groans from the crowd whenever Lonzo caught the ball and he was like thinking about shooting. Like, you could hear the crowd be like,
I was like the canary in the coal mine on that one, because I saw what he looked like back from injury. And I actually caught some flack from Cavs fans going into the year by saying that they didn't improve in the offseason, that the roster did not get better. They were like, what are you talking about? Isaac Okoro is way worse than Lonzo Ball. Turns out, no. Turns out that's not true at all.
No.
And that doesn't mean Isaac Okoro was the answer, but Lonzo isn't either. Jalen Tyson's stepping up.
They
has
really
kind of
miss
made up for that.
Ty Jerome bad over there, like really bad.
Yeah, I also did. We need to end this. We're starting to run long, but like you could get a whole rant from me of like there is no way y'all gave up on Ty Jerome based on those circumstances. I realized he shitted his pants from front to back, but like he was in the most unideal circumstances imaginable. He was being asked to be the second option on that team all of the sudden, or at the very least as a ball handler and shot creator. And it just wasn't meant for that. That's just not what he was supposed to do. And he should have been better, but you're telling me first year where he's having a real offensive leap, you can't pay him $9 million annually? That is no money in the NBA. That is nothing. You couldn't match that contract? Like, that actually baffled me and upset me a lot that they wouldn't bring him back, given how good of a season he had, and that it was his first time, and they threw him to the Wolves, and they were like, you got ripped apart, dumbass.
He didn't sign with the Wolves, he signed with the Grizzlies, but it's okay. They're both West. It's okay.
I meant like trial by fire type shit, and they were like, you got burnt.
Not with the Heat
Get out of here. And it's like, yeah, we'll trade for a decrepit Lonzo Ball. And I was like, I saw Lonzo Ball coming back from injury, and he had his moments, but there were people who were acting like the Cavs traded for what he looked like when he first signed with the Bulls, and that's just not the case. So, yeah. But East, my pick is the Pistons. It's pretty basic bitch to go for the top seed, but like, I don't know. I feel like people have kind of been understating how good they have been.
Yeah.
This was a great first episode. I feel good about this one.
Yeah.
Let me real quick, just for the promo for the people at home, we will be launching a Patreon for this podcast, and while we are not doing it after this episode, from here on out, we will be doing a 30-minute after show, and you can also submit questions there that we'll be throwing at the tail end of the podcast. Maybe going to do an audio version of those questions. We'll see what the logistics of that look like. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope you keep supporting going into the future. I'm looking forward to this. I had a very good time, especially when the playoffs come around. I do sometimes feel like I need to bounce basketball ideas off of people more, and I just in my own echo chamber sitting at my desk spewing shit. So it feels good to talk to someone else who's good at talking about this game.
Yeah, it feels good to talk some hoops. Appreciate y'all. I'm excited to do this. I've done a podcast a couple of times, did a little bit with my brother for a little, but haven't like had anything stick to consistently. So, we're going to keep this thing going. Yeah. Check out the Patreon, subscribe to all Jacob's channels. I'm sure most of you are probably seeing this from Jacob's channels and stuff, because of course he was associated with the first shoot around. And then I had to strategically eliminate the other two previous co-hosts of the shoot around so I could grab this position. But here I am now. Don't worry about what happened to them.
You guys have been asking where Alex Hoops is. Connor shot him. He's gone.
Allegedly. It's all alleged at this moment. Nothing's been proven. Nothing's been proven in court. I've not been arraigned. But yeah, it's going to be a good time. And I had one more thing I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was going to be, but yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, appreciate y'all for watching. Thanks.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See y'all later. Peace.